evening. For those of you just joining us, it has been quite a night in Boston city politics, perhaps a watershed election.
All right, and the victories in Boston's mayor's race go to former state representative Mel King and to city councilor Raymond Flynn. They will face off in the November election. Let's go now to King headquarters and News Center 5's Mary Richardson.
Club. There were so many people in this room that they had to ask a lot of them to leave, and those people, of course, would have been disappointed if they couldn't have seen Mel, so he has gone on to meet with those people in two different spots in the city, Satch's and the Businessman's Club. He gave his victory speech, probably one of the most stirring speeches people may have heard from Mel King. He was very forceful, a speech full of rhetoric, which called on the audience for a response, and it was extremely well received. We go now to a small portion of that speech if you tuned in late and you didn't get a chance to hear it.
Somebody said last night that a number of myths were going to die. And one myth that said that people of color in Boston wouldn't vote and stay together, that myth has died. We started off by saying that we may have come on different ships, but we are all in the same boat now. We're here tonight to say that the boat is changing its course. Welcome to the Rainbow Coalition.
And I had a chance to talk with Mel just before he left the room, and he said this is one of the greatest days in his entire life. He also said, I asked him how he was going to reach out to white voters to get the bigger numbers that he needs to win in the general election, and he did talk a bit about those city services and building a better Boston. He said there are a lot of practical, like-minded people out there for whom the issue of race is not as important as the issue of a livable city is. For News Center 5, I'm Mary Richardson reporting live from the Parker House.
All right, the number 2 spot on the ticket in November goes to Ray Flynn, and Martha Bradley is standing by at Flynn headquarters. Martha.
Chet, Ray Flynn just left this hall with his family, shaking hands, a line of his supporters lined up beside him, escorting him outside a victor in this race, but in this preliminary race. But as Ray Flynn kept stressing, he said it is not a victory for Ray Flynn, it is a victory for the city. It was just about 10 minutes ago he made his victory speech for the evening after thanking everyone, all of his opponents, Dennis Kearney, Larry DeCara, and David Finnegan. We'll hear from that right now.
Tonight marks a fundamental change in Boston politics. We have accomplished what the political experts predicted could not be done. This has truly been a campaign of neighborhoods, whereby people all across the city, in every neighborhood of this city, has spoken tonight. This is not a victory for Ray Flynn or even for this organization. This is a victory for the people in the city of Boston.
So Ray Flynn said for the next 5 weeks he will stick to the issues, he says, that got him here in the first place. The neighborhoods, the people, labor. He said he will wage a very positive campaign against Mel King. Reporting live from Ray Flynn headquarters, I'm Martha Bradley.
Thank you, Martha. The biggest upset of the night came in the defeat of David Finnegan, the man who took an early lead in this campaign, but whose popularity slackened in recent weeks. Kirby Perkins is live now at Finnegan headquarters. Kirby.
Natalie, they're not certain here, Finnegan's supporters and his advisors, whether his popularity flattened or whether it really was simply not there to begin with. One of them here referred to this campaign with a slight smile on his face as $1 million mistake. They're not quite certain what went wrong with the Finnegan campaign. By virtually every poll that was taken in the early portions of this campaign after Mayor Kevin White had said that he wouldn't run, established David Finnegan as the clear frontrunner. Several campaign managers for the opponents of David Finnegan conceded him early on, conceded him a spot in the final. Then apparently it just didn't quite make it. Talked to Peter Flynn a little while ago, and he said that Mel King did approximately as well as they thought he was going to do, but they drastically underestimated the strength of Ray Flynn. Ray Flynn has been working in the neighborhoods for almost 13 years, night after night after night, the kind of dogged determination that can be associated only with a candidate and a public servant who's willing to go to every small meeting and talk to virtually everyone that he can possibly talk to. David Finnegan, less than an hour ago, was on the podium here and gave his concession speech to his supporters. Here's a portion of that.
I want to initially congratulate the victors in this fight. Mel King and Ray Flynn worked very hard. They labored across this city, as did we, for the past 8 to 9 months, each of us in our heart believing that each of us would be the best mayor. But as it must be in any election, the people are the best judge, and the people have decided tonight. I offer my congratulations to both Mel King and to Ray Flynn, who I think ran first-class campaigns. They labored tirelessly, as did you and did all of us. And the people of the city of Boston have chosen the finalists in this election. They will be Mel King and Ray Flynn, and I give my heartfelt congratulations to the both of them.
Kevin White said before this election night that the most eloquent speech might very well be given by the loser. David Finnegan's speech was very dignified and quite eloquent. There were tears in the eyes of every member of his family. When he left the stage, he left quietly. He declined the opportunity to talk to anyone. One of his key advisors, Peter Mead, after he had left, said that he suspected that David Finnegan would not be endorsing either Mel King or Ray Flynn, but he wished them both well. He said he would continue to work for the welfare of Boston. One note I might point out here is that David Finnegan was in many quarters viewed as downtown David. Whether that was true or not, one thing is certainly clear, and that is that the downtown business interests that have been referred to so frequently do not have a candidate in the final. Reporting live from Finnegan headquarters, Kirby Perkins, News Center 5.
Well, it was evident early on, and certainly early this evening, that this would be a three-way race between King, Flynn, and Finnegan. But supporters of the other candidates hung on until the last possible moment. Here are the concession speeches from Fred Langone, Dennis Kearney, and Lawrence DeCara.
Our campaign brought a message of common sense to a people hungry for straight answers. Our campaign offered an open door to those who sought to participate in our political process. In the end, our efforts did not bring us victory, but that is no reason not to be proud as we gather this evening, because Boston is a better place due to our campaign, and each of us is a better person.
I believed it was important that new leadership move Boston into the decade ahead. I believed that I could make a significant contribution to Boston's future based upon my political experience, my educational background, my professional training, but most importantly, my personal commitment to Boston. And I want all of you, my friends and supporters in this room tonight, to know that I still feel I can make a contribution to Boston, and I will.
And I wish to the winners the best and offer them my gratuitous help in any which way I can after they become, one of them becomes mayor. Thank you very much.
For the so-called fringe candidates, Eloise Linger and Michael Gelber, there was no election victory, but both made the most of their candidacies.
I think we've run a very good campaign. We've gotten out as much as we possibly could, considering that I've been working full-time in a garment factory for most of the campaign. We've participated in all the forums that we could possibly make, and I think we've really gone a long way in getting across the idea that working people need a new political party, and that's what this campaign's been all about.
I am very pleased with the fact that I've established the total superiority of my understanding of economics, of education, and in particular of the fact that we are at the brink of war. And those are the issues that are important no matter who thinks they're not important. They are.
Outgoing Boston Mayor Kevin White told News Center 5's Ann McGrath that he was surprised by the preliminary results, surprised but pleased with what the vote signified.
A lot of things happened tonight, Annie. One is, and I really think it's important, I think that calling Boston a racist city nationally died tonight. I think Boston has healed itself enormously, and it's proven. You take that with all the downtown development, you say, that's great for the city. I think the young people and some of the activists, particularly in the tenants group, came out for Ray Flynn. And I think that's healthy for the city.
We will have more news, sports, and weather, and also we'll check in with our esteemed analysts who have been with us throughout the evening. But first, these messages. In other news tonight, officials tonight think that a gas leak caused an explosion that killed a nun in the southeastern Massachusetts town of Dighton. It happened at 1:30 this afternoon at the Dominican Sisters of the Presentation Novitiate. Apparently, a backhoe punctured a low-pressure gas line leading into the convent. Investigators think gas accumulated in the boiler room and exploded when the water heater went on.
I heard the blast. It really sounded like a bomb going off. It scared me so bad I wouldn't come out of the house for 10 minutes. I come running over. I got over here. I had no shoes on. I went back and had to put shoes on. So.
What did it look like? What was happening when you first came over here?
Just everybody was running around. Nobody knew what had happened, or trying to find everybody.
Killed was 76-year-old Sister Maria Therese Ange. Another nun, 28-year-old Sister Vermilia Vertacompande, was critically injured. And tonight, fire officials in Haverhill say an early morning blaze in that community was accidental. That fire took the lives of 4 people, though. Gloria Cloucher and 2 children were found dead upstairs in their duplex apartment. Another daughter died later at Hale Hospital in Haverhill. Ray Cloucher and his 20-year-old stepdaughter survived that fire. She is reported in stable condition tonight.
And tonight, federal officials are hailing the indictment of 15 people, including alleged organized crime leaders from Chicago, Kansas City, and Milwaukee. They are charged with skimming some $2 million in profits from Las Vegas casinos during the past 9 years. Some law enforcement officials say the indictment, which was unsealed earlier today, reads like a who's who of organized crime in the Midwest. The United States Supreme Court today refused to review the cases of 2 Washington figures who want their names cleared. Alger Hiss, convicted of perjury in the post-World War II Red Scare, and Florida Congressman Richard Kelly, convicted of bribery in the Abscam investigation. Both lost their bids before the High Court. Today's action clears the way for Kelly to be sentenced to up to 15 years in jail. And flight attendants at Eastern Airlines are preparing for a possible strike tomorrow at midnight. The union has been negotiating since this morning, but tonight representatives for both sides say they do not think that a strike can be averted. The flight attendants have been without a contract for more than a year, and they have been unwilling to make concessions to the financially troubled company until they have an agreement on paper. Unions striking against Continental Airlines have taken their case to court. They're asking the federal judge to dismiss a company petitioned to reorganize under federal bankruptcy laws. Machinists and flight attendants say Continental is more concerned about breaking union contracts than it is about repaying debts.
Tonight, 4 men are charged with embezzling millions of dollars from the New York securities firm of Prudential Bache. The theft of between $5 and $15 million allegedly was carried out by a manager of the firm and 3 outside confederates. According to the FBI, the men funneled investment earnings into phony bank accounts and then withdrew those funds. The money was stolen from company money and not from customer accounts. Money problems in Israel sent thousands of citizens to the stores today. The government ordered the devaluation of the nation's currency effective tomorrow, and that means that the cost of most items will go up by about 50%. News of the devaluation led to long lines at the food markets and gas pumps throughout Israel.
Well, Dickie says the nice weather is over for a little bit, and we can expect a little rain coming up.
It's a mild night.
Well, just the computer, sweetheart?
Right.
We'll set your effects up here in just a second.
Good. Thank you.
We're well behind the power curve. Hang on.
Good. Did you find out how much time I have?
I'm going to as soon as there's a break on headsets.
And who I throw it back to?
How much time do you have? Okay, who's he going to throw it back to and how much time? You throw it to Natalie.
Time?
Don't forget, Dickie, she can't hear you either, so you'll have, well, maybe she can on the telex, I don't know.
How much time?
I won't ask her anything.
2.5.
2.5? 2.5.
Here's one of your next.
Okay, Dick Albert, it's your turn. The weather held for today, but I understand a little rain coming our way.
All right, Natalie, it's a nice night out there, and it's cloudy, and it's warmer than it was last night. Last night, temperatures in Concord, New Hampshire, down to around freezing at this time. Tonight, 48 degrees, so it's cloudy, and the clouds are acting as a blanket, and the wind's coming off the ocean. That's helping warm us up, too. So it is going to be warmer the next couple of days, a little bit of moisture heading our way also. As a matter of fact, we look at the satellite picture. Look at these clouds coming in from the south and from the west. No question about it, it is going to be a cloudy day tomorrow, and I think the wet look will be around before the day is over. We have moisture coming in from the Atlantic Ocean, and we have a little patch of rain. Oh, Pennsylvania now, New Jersey, and southward through Virginia and the Carolinas. And we'll take a look at exactly where that rain is. We take a look at super radar. We're plotting it out for you. New York, Pennsylvania, down through about southern New Jersey, Atlantic City, it's raining. All the way down to Florida, and that rain, the heaviest rain appears now, it's going to be west of the Boston area, but I think we will get some rain tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, into early Thursday. There's also some tropical air to the south of us, way down towards, with this warm front out over the ocean, and some of that tropical air could get in here for late Thursday and Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if the temperature approached 80 degrees here on Friday. So we have a clouded future, we have some spotty rain, and it is going to get warmer, and it is going to get very, very humid. Here's the coolness over the East Coast, but you see this little hump of 70s and 80s? Well, that is going to try to get in here with the tropical air Thursday and Friday. Here's the way I see it for tomorrow. The wet look will be moving from the west towards the east and make it into the Boston area afternoon time. So you might take the umbrella and raincoat to work just in case it gets here before you head home. All right, let's look at the forecast now for the next couple of days. Cloudy overnight, in the 50s for a low temperature. Tomorrow, I see a cloudy and breezy day. Probably some rain or drizzle developing by afternoon. Pretty windy from the southeast. Tomorrow night will be mild and muggy on the wet side, around 60 degrees, and Thursday, cloudy. Maybe a peek of the sun in the afternoon in the 70s. It'll be very warm, very, very muggy on Thursday. That's the way I see it for now. Now back to Nat.
All right, Dick, thank you. If a group known as Action for Children's Television gets its way, the lineup of Saturday morning cartoons on network television could change somewhat. The group charges that 8 programs, among them Pac-Man, G.I. Joe, The Smurfs, and Strawberry Shortcake, are really just half-hour commercials designed to sell specific products. ACT says the programs violate long-standing FCC rules.
The problem is that you cannot so mix up editorial speech and advertising speech that it is impossible to tell the difference. You can't do it in the Washington Post columns, you can't do it in magazines, you can't do it on adult television, and you cannot do it on children's television.
ACT would like the FCC to rule that these programs are indeed commercials.
Game 1 of the World Series is over. Don Gillis will have the highlights after these words.
This is what she told me before. Yeah.
I have to go to the bathroom, too. Do you need an introduction, or is he going to come cold? What's the word? Do we introduce him? Or?
Am I to be introduced, or?
Yes.
I am by?
By Natalie.
By Natalie?
On 3.
Okay. I give it back to you.
Yeah, no break, and we go directly to the analyst.
Yeah, she says that after sports we're going straight to analysis without the break. After sports we're going to analysis without break.
And we should all know how long we have.
And Nat, after the sports, stretch it a little so that we can get...
There was another contest tonight in Baltimore, the World Series.
Right. I bet you even know what the final score was.
I do, and they were all scored on homers, 2 to 1. 2 to 1, right?
Boy, are you smart. You really are. Yeah, Game 1 of the 1983 World Series turned out to be a pitching duel. Each club got just 5 hits, but the Phillies made 2 of those home runs. The Orioles could get just 1. That's how it ended, Philadelphia 2 to 1. Memorial Stadium in Baltimore filled to the rafters for this game, played under the threat of rain most of the night. Contests that had home runs, good defense, some bad defense. First the bad, courtesy Baltimore third baseman Todd Cruz. He drops the infield pop fly. Fortunately for Cruz, no damage done. Orioles take the early lead on a first inning home run by former Red Sox player Jim Pigpen Dwyer. Came off Philly starter John Denny, 1-0 Baltimore. Phillies got that one back, though, in the 6th inning when Joe Morgan homered over that same right field fence. As you will note, little Joe can still get the job done, can't he? 8th inning now, game still tied at 1. Philadelphia's Gary Maddox touches McGregor with a homer to left field, so the Phillies take the lead 2 to 1. Could have been 3 to 1 had part-time player John Lowenstein not made this incredible catch to rob Bo Diaz of a home run. Lowenstein reaches over the fence to snare it. That's a catch they'll remember in Baltimore for a long time to come. Al Holland then came on to retire the last 4 Oriole batters, and the Phillies won it 2-1. Well, the NFL trading deadline passed at 4 p.m., and the Patriots were not able to complete a trade of Mike Haynes in time. The club they were dealing with eventually accepted the terms, but it was too late to beat the deadline. Mike chose not to comment on the day's event, but I did catch up with Patriots general manager Pat Sullivan, who wanted to be sure that everyone knew this.
Our offer to Mike is still on the table. It's a big offer. It's the same offer that we've had there, and we feel that we'd like to have him come in and play for that, and that money is there for as long as it takes him to come in and play. And
prorated week by week, it drops off?
That's correct, yeah.
Is it too late in the season? Is Mike Haynes not worth it to you now?
No, because he is worth it to us. He's a good player. He's a good individual, and I don't think that we'd ever really reach that stage with him.
Houston Oilers took just 1 day to name defensive coordinator Chuck Studley as interim head coach, replacing Ed Biles. Celtics have taken their exhibition show to L.A. They're playing the Lakers right now at the Forum. As we came on the air, the Celtics were leading 28-27 in the game in the second period. The New Jersey Nets have placed guard Michael Ray Richardson on waivers for his failure to report to a drug rehabilitation clinic. The Bruins skate back into action Thursday night when they play host to Montreal. On the ice tonight, it was the Islanders 5 and Los Angeles 2. And the Kansas City Royals continue to clean house. They put Cesar Geronimo on waivers today, joining Amos Otis, Steve Renko, and Gaylord Perry. Russ Nixon was named as a coach for the Expos today, ironically replacing Vern Rapp, the guy who took his job as manager of the Reds. And that is it for sports. Once again, here's Chet.
Okay, Don, now besides Boston, besides the preliminary election, in Boston, there were elections held in 8 other communities today, and we have final returns now in 5 of the 6 communities where the mayor's race was contested. In Holyoke, incumbent Ernest Poole will face off in November against challenger Terrence Murphy. In Woburn, where incumbent Thomas Higgins chose not to seek office, the finalists in the November runoff are John Rabbitt and Paul Meany. In Attleboro, where incumbent Gerald Keene also chose not to run, the candidates advancing to the November final are Hank Sennett and Brenda Reed. And in Gloucester, incumbent Leo Alper will face Representative Richard Silva next month. And in Chicopee, where Mayor Robert Kumar is stepping down, finalists in November will be Richard Lack and William Aislinn, Jr. Okay, now one more time to the analysts who've been with us throughout most of the night. Congressman Brian Donnelly, Senator Joe Timildy, and State Representative Bill Galvin. Your final thoughts on what really was a historic election in Boston today?
It certainly was, Chet. I think if you look to the future now, it's Ray Flynn's to lose. Clearly, I would think that Ray is the odds-on favorite. The job that the King campaign has to do is that they have to fulfill that rainbow coalition. He has to use the momentum of the primary victory to get out to those high-number wards and start tomorrow morning.
Can he do it, Joe Timildy?
I don't think so. You saw Ray's victory statement. Ray's not going to take this lightly. Ray said that he's going into every neighborhood of the city. But, again, I don't want to sell Mel King short. He starts smiling, keeps that tie on, and Mel's going to be a very effective campaigner. It's going to be the World Series of Boston politics, and something that we're going to enjoy watching.
Bill Galvin?
Well, I think it is going to be an interesting race. I think both Mel and Ray are very experienced in the ways of city politics, and I think that they're going to provide a very interesting race. But I also share the general opinion that Brian has expressed, namely that it's going to be very difficult for Mel to reach out there. I ask, for instance, where are the business community going to go? Where is the homeowners who voted for Finnegan going to go? I think they'll find it very difficult, given Ray's positions more than anything, Mel's positions rather more than anything else, to find him a comfortable place to go.
What do you make of the exit poll, as Steve Teichner told us about earlier in the night, that of the people who voted today, and as they were coming out, we talked to them, 41% said they would vote for Flynn, 35% for King, 14% undecided. And when you put in a little margin of error there, that would almost be a toss-up, according to Teichner.
Well, I don't believe it, number one. I think if you looked at the Finnegan vote, where that was going on the whole, to the numbers that I saw, to Flynn. I just don't believe it.
And the other part is that Boston considers itself voting a very private manner, and they didn't tell you if a coat was on fire. Rightfully so. So that as much as I like Stephen, I don't put any stock in those numbers.
I would say that it's quite possible. There was a lot of intensity of feeling at the end between Finnegan and Flynn. It's possible that Finnegan voters faced with that choice might not have responded as honestly as they might in a few days when they get to think about it. I would have to still give Ray Flynn the advantage, but by no means is this race over, by no means.
You know, through all of this analysis here, we know that the people who answer these exit polls, by far, the biggest reason they voted for Mel King and Ray Flynn was for change. What's the change you see the Boston electorate looking for?
Well, I think both Ray and Mel ran very liberal-orientated campaigns, that much more attention has to be paid to the neighborhoods, that there might have been over the past few years too much emphasis on downtown development, that the neighborhood business districts, the Fields Corner, the Codman Squares, the Cleary Squares, that there has to be more attention from City Hall to those things, and also housing. Tremendous housing crunch in the city. The average income of the city resident is down. People are finding a very difficult time to find affordable housing. Those two candidates articulated those issues better than the people that lost.
What do you think, Joe Timildy? Do you think there are specific reasons for
one other factor, I think that the print in this campaign pictured David Finnegan as a campaign of the downtown, of the business. I think his campaign advertising underscored that in a lot of ways. People were looking for somebody who would have a neighborhood participation. Obviously, Ray has stood for that. Mel stands for that. And it was a case of which one of those could convince the